Hey guys, Sarah Ulmer here for Y'all Politics. We are sitting down with Congressman Kelly to talk a little bit about what's going on in DC right now and how they are addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as other work that has to be done when it comes to federal government. Congressman Kelly, thanks so much for being with us today. Talk to me a little bit about what's happening in regards to COVID and how y'all are addressing that right now.
Yeah, in the House right now, nothing. They sent over the $3 trillion wish list that was packed full of gifts and special interests and all those things in the House, which really wasn't a serious bill. But we still need that anyway, because what that lets us do is now the Senate will push a package, which will be much different, and we're used to that. So then you go conference the two, and hopefully we'll come out with something that is reasonable. That both sides. So pet project on either side or special interest groups that are the majority of those will come out, and so surely we'll get a serious product that comes out once the Senate decides. You'll go to conference and those committee chairs and the people who are selected to be conferees on the committee in the approach, usually the approach or ways and means and different committees will be on that. We will have a lot of input as we did in the first two. I didn't have a lot of input on the House side, but I got to use our senators and both ours in Mississippi and other friends that I have to influence the process. And then, of course, through this, we influence Kevin McCarthy and those guys who also help with the Senate, help with the president. And so I think that's very important to understand. We're going to get whatever product we deserve at the end. But right now, I think you can't pay attention to either of the separate bills. It's going to be the product that comes out and look much different than both of those.
How have relationships been over the last couple of months, people working together? How has that looked among the Mississippi delegation as well as the House and the Senate in DC?
I can tell you, I've been up here, I guess, close to 5 years now. And it was always good, and the last year has been really hard. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have good relationships. I do. Benny Thompson, I work really well with him. We do a lot of things that help Mississippi. Politically, we vote differently a lot because we have different constituents and different values of what we think we should do. But I can tell you there's several things we work really well on. I've got other friends like Seth Moulton on defense. So there's a lot of people that I work with, but I can tell you from the leadership level, I've never seen it more toxic. It's punitive, it's mean, and it's all political. It's listen, even bills they know, it seems like they care more about passing bills to get political points to try to win in November than they do about taking care of the American people, and that is really frustrating to me.
I mean, would it be fair to say it's almost an exploitation of a disaster? They're using the disaster to their advantage?
What they're doing it right now. They had over 80 people vote remotely today that under affidavit said because of COVID and travel restrictions, they can't be here. Before that rule, only 13 missed, but they've got over 80. And not only that, but they're waiting an hour after the vote to call it in, if they're even calling it in. I mean, I'm assuming they do because they have to sign a letter for each one. But it is, let me tell you, and they're being punitive in the way that they make us vote. So we never voted before 6 o'clock on Mondays for the first 4.5 years. Since the last 3 weeks, they've made votes before lunch on Mondays to force Republicans to have to fly back on Sundays, and they try to take them late on Fridays so we don't get home until Saturday because they don't want us voting and doing our jobs. They would rather be on the beach, on a boat, on vacation, from their home, or driving down the road and sending in their vote and then coming up here and doing the people's work. And we're social distancing. We're wearing masks. I've got several different modes and models of masks. We're doing all the right things, but they are not doing that. They are using it as an excuse to not do their job, and that is just unacceptable for me.
I was going to ask what, as far as the spread of COVID amongst lawmakers and staff members, obviously y'all have a good amount of people in the House that work up there. How has that been? Are most people being able to stay healthy?
Yes, they are, and I've had friends who've gotten it and completed the process of going through the 14 days and not testing positive for symptoms that are back up here. My friend Dr. Dunn from Florida, he's had it. I've had several other friends. And so what you try to do is do all the right things. You wash your hands, use hand sanitizer, you wear your mask when you're in contact with other people or have the thing. And your mask, quite frankly, most of the masks we have don't protect us, they protect others. And so, when I'm walking through the halls, I wear a mask. I don't like that, but I do it because I'm protecting others. And so I just think you do all the right things, but you can still come up here and safely do that.
So I'm sure you're aware the Mississippi legislature is able to come back in through October 10th in order to appropriate any money that might come from you guys. Do you think that an agreement will be reached on if more dollars are appropriated by that time?
Oh yes, I do. I can't see that going much past the August break. If you get into October, quite frankly, you're too late for it to help a lot of people who need the help that it's going to give. And there's some sticking points on there. The president wants to do a payroll tax cut, which I'm for. I'm 100% for. I think that's a way to get money into people's pocket without it penalizing employers. I'm not to continue the $600 a month, $600 a week extra. You've got folks that are making more to stay home right now, and they won't go back to work even though jobs are available. So you got to find out. What I would rather do is pay an incentive for folks who do go back to work in necessary jobs. I would rather take that same $600 if we're going to do it and incentivize people to work rather than incentivize them not to work. But they'll work through that, but I think we'll be done by August. I hope.
Right. We can always hope. Is there any conversation going on about if there will be penalties for people or what those penalties will look like for people who are turning down or refusing jobs, refusing to go back to
They're
work?
already there. They're already there.
Are those going to be enforced?
If they have turned down employment or did not go back where they had it, they should terminate all unemployment benefits immediately. But our employers have to make sure they do the job of saying they're employed, they were offered a job and sent it. And then because of the backlog, I don't think they're getting to them in a timely enough manner. Those expire July 31st. But we already have the rules in place. What we need is our unemployment office there. We may have to plus that up. But
Right.
So I don't see any new provisions are necessary. What we need to do is enforce. And I don't think that's from being lazy, and I don't think that's from bad decision making. They were overwhelmed.
Right.
Of so many people going on unemployment, and quite frankly, there just wasn't time to go through the process to get everybody off.
Well, I think all systems right now have been extremely overwhelmed. Even in Mississippi, we've seen longer wait times for testing to come back because the private facilities are just completely overwhelmed with the amount of people that are trying to get tested.
Yeah, and I think our governor's done a great job of shifting assets and resources and focus. And his response has not been perfect, nor is the president's. But I'll tell you what, they've had really good responsive things, and they've shifted resources to critical areas and to critical needs as well as I think they can do. Not perfect, but absolutely, I think they've done a good job.
You mentioned that some people are using this to play party politics and kind of get more votes or take more votes in November. Do you think that the pandemic and kind of where we are now in it and the decisions that have been made by leadership, whether on the Democratic or the Republican side, do you think they're going to have an impact on how people vote in November?
Absolutely. I think right now that's the number one issue to all voters in most of the polls that I'm seeing. Now, I don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to polls because they put in factors and numbers and things that I don't understand,
Right.
and they're really right completely. I mean, that's when they have a plus or minus, and I think the plus or minus is greatest in what they have. But that being said, I do believe that the most important issue on voters' minds going into the November election, unless something significantly changes, we've still got 100 days, is COVID. The other is safety and security, both in the streets and for medical purposes. That is going to be a huge, but coronavirus by far is the biggest factor in most voters' minds right now.
Well, kind of talking about safety and security, you were able to speak on a defense bill not a couple of days ago. Can you talk to me a little bit about that defense bill and the position of the delegation?
Yeah. So I was good with it coming out of committee. It had a lot of stuff I don't like, but there's a conference process, and people never understand that. Even the things I don't like, I could stomach to get to conference because they will probably be stripped out. Because I'm talking to Chairman Inhofe, to Senator Wicker, the people I know who I can trust to say that's not going to be in here in the final product.
Right.
Helps. But Then they did the Insurrection Act, okay, poking the president in the eye because he might, they thought he might be going to do something somewhere, and they went much broader. The problem is they don't tell the truth, and they'll say, "Oh, we're going to remove the Confederate statue." Well, okay, that's an issue in and of itself, but then they add other things, people who were dead before the Confederacy started, people who served after the Confederacy, and then so they added other things in there, so it gets much broader. And then the final part is they substitute the architect of the Capitol, a non-elected official, gets to tell Mississippi, California, Louisiana what statues they can and cannot send. I'm sorry, I didn't come up here to give my voice to a bureaucrat who's not been elected, or the voice of the state of Mississippi. So you don't even get to the issues because they're and then they redefine them and talk to them in a different way. So I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Is there anything else that's been kind of, you mentioned some of the priorities of what voters are looking at, but anything that people might not be aware of that you guys are working on right now that might have gotten pushed back in the media because of all of the COVID coverage that you think is really important for Mississippians?
First of all, COVID is important, and I think it's going to be on the news all day, every day, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think we need to stay aware. I think we need to protect our folks who are at risk, whether that be due to age or due to being a long-term care or nursing home facility. I think we need to wear. I think we need to wear masks when we're in contact with other people. I don't think I need to be wearing one outside when I'm running because I'm not around other people. But when I'm around other people, I should. It's a respect and due to those. But I also think we don't need to mandate as a federal government. I think every region, and Tate Reeves has done a good job of looking at the areas where it helps. But I think we have to be very, very careful about wanting federal help to do things. What we want are guidelines. We want resources, and we're trying to do that. We want money. But we don't want the federal government setting the rules for each of the states. And it's the same way we're going back to school. We found that most kids, a high percentage, and I won't quote the percentage, but I think it's above 90% of kids do not carry or transmit the disease. So using that, but I think there's some areas where that may be different. And I think that needs to be a local decision, unless it elevates and shows that it's people are in danger, in which case maybe a higher level needs to come in. But it needs to be a local decision, but they need to be educated and informed in making that decision. And that's what the federal and state governments should do, is be informing those local school districts whether or not it's safe to reopen. And then I think they need to have options. I think they need to have, if a student does not want to go to school, they shouldn't be cheated out of an education. They should be allowed to participate via the same platforms we're on.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot that's been going on that, has gotten talked about, and things that are going to continue to unfold, especially as we get into the fall months, and how that's going to impact this virus and what that spread looks like. Mississippi, we've got till the 31st of July for our schools to make their final decisions on what school is going to look like. So I know that's going to be on everybody's minds. But Congressman, I appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
One other thing, we're getting real close, it looks like, on a vaccine. We just bought millions of one that looks like we hope it'll get FDA approval. And that changes the whole dynamic. So let's pray for a vaccine, let's pray for a cure, and let's pray for good sense for all our people to do what's safe, not just for themselves, but for others. And with that, thank you so much.